Hey everyone, it's Mark Fitzgerald here from the Fundamental Escape podcast, and I am here with Lucas. Hey Lucas.
Hey Mark, how are you?
Good, I'm good. A little cheesy over the top intro. So we're diving into another episode of Belief, which I'm actually getting. I think, I've been thinking about this. I think this series is one of the most exciting to me out of all I'm doing at the moment, I have to say.
Well, I think it's really, at least it's an interesting topic for me too. I'm very glad to, have a nice, pleasant conversation with
Yeah,
somebody
yeah.
with very different views, and so I think it's fabulous as well.
Absolutely. So I had this whimsical idea. We'll see where it goes, but I was quite keen to obviously dive into the subject of heresy because heresy is a word that crops up in, well, it does come up from time to time in sort of very conservative evangelical circles, and I think, to be honest, you could have a lot to say if we dive into this because sometimes when you're in a movement or it's like you're too far in to see clearly, if that makes sense. Like you can't see
Yeah,
the forest for the trees because you're in amongst it. And I think sometimes it takes an outside perspective to gain a bit of clarity and insight. So, obviously you don't really have a dog in the fight when it comes to holding, religious orthodoxy. So
right.
maybe, yeah, we'll see where it goes. How do you
It,
feel
it
about
sounds,
that?
yeah, it sounds very interesting. I have seen a Christian call another Christian a heretic once, or suggest that
Ooh,
at least that he was being heretical
what was
in
the
a
what was the
public.
subject matter?
It was actually it was Dr. Dino. Um,
Oh,
yeah, versus it was a debate with what's the
when you
guy's name?
when you say
It's
Doctor Dino, you talking about Kent Hovind?
I am talking about Kent Hovind. Yes,
Oh
it was
right,
Kent Hovind.
I emailed him a while ago. I was actually keen to talk to him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm actually going to try and get in touch. You know what's funny about him? Actually, this is perfect. That's so perfect that you brought him up because this we can just launch straight into this. So Kent Hovind has a huge following, or at least had a huge following pre his prison experience,
Yeah.
and I guess still throughout he had tons of letters and stuff written to him when he was in prison. And I guess for the listeners who don't have a clue who I'm talking about, Kent Hovind is a fundamental conservative Christian who teaches creationism, basically for a living, essentially.
Hmm.
That's kind of the short version. You can check him out on Google, I suppose. But so yeah, and he did end up going to prison for a number of years because I don't know the details. I think it was tax evasion or some loophole, or I don't know. He claimed that it was an innocent thing, but who knows? Who knows? God
Yeah.
only knows. There we go.
I
Um,
think the federal government knew.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, it's funny at the time. Well, I was very fundamental at the time when this happened to him, and I immediately went down the road of, he's telling the truth, and that's why they're against him, and blah. That was how I thought at the time. So anyhow, that's quite funny.
Wow.
Um, but quite honestly, I don't know either way. So, but anyway, the why this is interesting and why this ties very closely to the subject of heresy. And it actually has something to do with someone who I've interviewed on my podcast, funny enough. So the guy, Paul Young, he wrote a book called The Shack. Have you heard of that at all?
I haven't. No.
You haven't? Okay. It only sold 22 million plus copies, but
Oh,
yeah, and it's like the number one book in Brazil or Portugal, somewhere, I don't know. It was huge. It was a phenomenon. They're actually making a movie of it at the moment. So The Shack, long story short, again, The Shack was considered absolutely heretical by many, many, many people, including people that I know and love. People I grew up with were like, no, don't read The Shack, it's terrible. So the reason, in a nutshell, um, so basically, I guess I need to give a synopsis of the book because it sort of, gives some context. So basically, the main character of The Shack was a guy named Mackenzie, and at the beginning of the book, you find out that his dad was essentially a drunk who used to beat him and his mother, and it was just horrible. This terrible situation. So to say the least, he had dad issues. So the main character of this book, had a checkered kind of past and these issues with his dad. So basically, long story short, and sorry if I'm going to ruin the movie for people that haven't seen the book and read the book and blah blah blah, but it's been out for years, so get over it. So he goes on a camping sort of trip with his family, and essentially it's a novel, by the way. It's a fiction. It's a fictional story. So he goes away with his kids and his wife, and his younger daughter Missy or Melissa. She goes something happens with the older kids. They're in a canoe or something, and they tip over, and anyway, things get out of hand, and their focus is all taken up with that. And then in the meantime, his daughter Missy, sort of wanders off, and nobody knows where she is, and they're like, "Oh my goodness, what's going on?" Freaking out. And it turns out, long story short, she ends up being essentially the victim of a serial killer. So there was a guy, they called him the Ladybug Killer, and he had killed like 4 other girls. She was like the victim number five, I think it was. And so there was this huge story around tragedy and loss and pain and grief and all that sort of stuff and all those human emotions. And so that was one of the reasons the book resonated so much with people, because it dealt with such a real sort of topic and things like that. And pain and suffering, on a side note, as I've actually talked about this on my detox series. I talked about this with one of my friends. I was just kind of saying how suffering is ironically one of the things the church seems to deal with the worst. And it's ironic to me, considering, Jesus' death on the cross is kind of the center of Christianity. That's just a little side note, little plug for my detox series there. But anyway, so she goes missing. They never find the body. So it's this tragedy that's unresolved. And so he ends up getting a note in his mailbox, basically saying, "Meet me at the shack," because they found her blood-soaked dress in this little shack, and that's all they found. That was all the evidence they found and everything like that. And so it was like a year later, he gets this note in his mailbox, and it says, "Meet me at the shack," and it was signed Papa, Papa was like his wife's pet name for God, sort of thing, which is a bit cheesy, I know, but so. Anyway, I'm cutting to the chase because it's, long story short. So basically, he turns up at the shack. He's like, he's just overwhelmed with curiosity. He's like, what is this? Is this some kind of sick game? Is someone trying to mess with my head? Blah, blah, blah. So he turns up, and anyway, you'd be familiar, obviously, with the concept of the Trinity, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. So this is like cutting to the core of traditional sort of belief. He turns up anyway, and it's basically like this weekend that he spends at the shack with God, essentially. So it has depictions in the book of the Trinity. So God the Father is depicted as a large black African woman, which I'm sure even as an atheist you could appreciate how well that would go down in conservative Christian circles.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So that was one of the core things. And then there was like... I think the Holy Spirit was depicted as this little Asian girl, and then there was like Jesus was just like a man sort of thing. And so the biggest controversy around it was this, like, it's heresy because he's depicting God as this woman and blah blah. And I mean, there is this is cutting to the core of a lot of people's theology, because as you probably know yourself, like a lot of Christian theology is very male orientated. So I remember years ago listening to someone talking about sort of the feminine aspects of God, and I was trying to relay that to someone else, and they were just like, what are you talking about? This is like the worst thing ever. And I was like, what the heck? And to me, it's just so laughable. It's not even, I'm like, of course God is neither male nor female, if God exists, if you want to go that far. But, I was like, that's absurd. So this book was, as I say, it was wildly successful. And as I say, I talked to the author, Paul Young, on my podcast. He's an amazing guy, and he's got thousands and thousands of stories, I mean, even if you don't believe in God, I mean, you could sit down and listen to this guy for a week, tell these stories. I mean, because of the theme of this book, essentially, he gets stories from parents who've lost their kids in car accidents and all this crazy stuff, and they're just like, your book saved my life, kind of thing. It was like amazing.
Wow.
So we talked all these positive stories. And then I was like, let's get into the like negative stuff. Like, so this is a guy, this is kind of dope. Oh, anyway, so I should tie this back to Kent Hovind, because that's where I started talking about this. And then I'll go on to a little bit of other stuff. So Um, so Kent Hovind read The Shack when he was in prison because he said he loves to read, and it was someone gave it to him, and so he read it and he loved it. He absolutely loved it, and so this is why it's quite funny, this whole sort of heresy issue, because a lot of his fan base essentially are very conservative Christians who are not, not a fan of that sort of work.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so there's a video of him talking about it on YouTube, and basically he was getting letters from people going, "Why are you endorsing the Shack? What's going on? Like, you've lost the plot and blah blah. If you don't, renounce this." Someone actually threatened him. They said, "If you don't renounce this, blah blah blah. Like, basically, we're going to stop listening to you," sort of thing. And he just goes, "Well, you better go find someone else because I don't really deal with threats very well, And I mean, for whatever you think of the guy, I was like, I kind of took my hat off to him for that. I was like, fantastic. I love that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
that's interesting. And I think it's quite funny, the whole idea of this. I mean, it's funny, even the word heretic. I've kind of heard is it epistemology of the word? Is that where a word comes from? Etymology. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
I try to sound smarter than I really am sometimes.
Me too.
I took a risk. It didn't pay off. So, the etymology of the word heretic is apparently, I should probably look this up, but apparently it means free to choose. So by that definition, I would love to label myself a heretic because I think we should all be free to choose.
Yeah.
So that's quite interesting.
Well, my experience with Kent Hovind, this was pre-release. It was a long time ago, but he was talking to Dr. Hugh Ross. Are you familiar with that name?
No.
So Hugh Ross is a Christian. He's an author and a scientist, and he is an
Christian and a scientist.
Yes.
Wow, it happens.
But not a Christian scientist. And he is an old Earth creationist. So he believes in evolution. He believes in sort of a God-guided evolution, but he believes in the scientific facts of the age of the universe and the age of the Earth, and it was it was shocking to me, actually, and even as an atheist, to hear Kent Hovind with so much vitriol and saying to Hugh Ross, well, some people would say that's heretical. And what he meant was, you, sir, are a heretic.
Yeah.
He didn't say it that way.
Yeah,
but
so it was like passive aggressive.
Yeah, it was really shocking to me because, I mean, these are people who fundamentally agree in the most important thing about Christianity, right? Which is you believe in that Jesus is your Lord and Savior, and He's going to take you away. So who cares how old you are?
On the note that this whole subject is heresy, I would question: is that the most important thing about Christianity?
Yeah, boy, you are going to get labeled a heretic.
We're just warming up, Lucas. We're just warming up.
Right.
I'm keen to talk about this kind of stuff because, well, essentially, look. I mean, long story short, I mean, it's not that I've explicitly, openly been labeled a heretic myself, but in some ways, I kind of have, And I'd be keen to sort of get your reflections on this, and genuinely, even if we weren't recording, I'd be genuinely interested to hear your thoughts. So, as I said, I mentioned, say, the likes of Rob Bell. Out of curiosity, are you familiar with who he is at all?
No, I'm afraid I'm not.
Where have you been all your life?
I have been raising kids. So
Rob Bell is kind of a big deal in Christian circles. Whether you love him or hate him, you know about him if you're a Christian, pretty much. At least in the West, I guess. And so he he started a church called Mars Hill in Grand Rapids, Michigan. This was like 20 odd years ago now, I think. And it grew into one of the biggest churches in America. So they ended up with like 10,000 people. The whole mega church label gets thrown around, I suppose.
Okay.
And, but the thing about Rob Bell, and again, I mean, admittedly, I have mixed feelings, and I may actually have the chance to speak to him in the next couple of months. I've been in touch with his publisher, so that's pretty cool. But, So he started writing books like 2006 or 7 maybe. May have even been 2008. So his first book, as I mentioned to you, was called Velvet Elvis. And so
Uh,
from the get go, Rob Bell has been someone who essentially has had kind of warning bells around him. No pun intended. So in Velvet Elvis, essentially, the subtitle of the book was Repainting the Christian Faith. And so right there you can go, ooh, what's going on? That's interesting. So he uses this analogy at the beginning of the book about painting, and he says, he describes this painting, this Velvet Elvis painting that he has in his basement, and he described it in detail. And he's very articulate. He's a very, very intelligent man. He's very,
yeah.
very into science too. Actually, he did a sort of a speaking tour about things like quantum physics and stuff. And he's very, very knowledgeable. And so in his book, he opens up the idea with with the idea of painting, and he's like, how he says, oh, the person who painted it, they didn't even sign their full name. They just wrote this R or something. It was like the letter of their name. And he's like, because when you're that good, you don't even have to write your full name, And so he basically says, imagine if this person who painted this picture held it up and said to everyone, he basically declared to every artist on the planet, like, put your brushes down because I've just painted the best painting ever, You'd be like, that guy's lost his mind. Of course you have to keep painting. Of course you have to keep going. And so it's this whole sort of loose analogy around things like the Reformation, right? Like we had like 500 years ago, like Martin Luther
Yeah.
revolting against the Catholic Church and reforming, And it's funny because nowadays we have the label Reformed, the Reformed Church, the Lutheran Church sort of thing. But the early reformers, they never said they were reformed; they said they were reforming. That was the whole point.
Yeah.
So it was like this kind of admission that they're on a journey, sort of thing. They're like, we haven't arrived at a destination, sort of thing. So, excuse me. So, yeah, he kind of opens up the book with that sort of idea and essentially just sets out to start asking some sort of provocative questions. Like, it's not a sort of a theology book like, here's what to believe, ABC. Like, Rob Bell is very good at asking questions and kind of provoking conversation, essentially. So he throws out a few things. He says, well, one of the key things he sort of lays a foundation of is what he calls he basically calls it brickianity. He says if all your doctrines and theologies are like bricks, you build them up as like a wall, essentially, and it keeps you basically away from everyone else because you're just behind this wall of theology. And he said the other problem with seeing your faith like that is, essentially if you pull out one brick, the whole wall comes down. It's like an all or nothing approach to faith, right?
Yeah.
There's no sort of flexibility. And so he, because he said, he came across someone who'd basically said something along the lines of, if you don't believe the earth was created in 6 literal days, then you're denying that Jesus died on the cross, or something really weird, some leap of logic.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, he kind of paints that world of, what he calls brickianity. And then he ends up telling this kind of sort of casual story about his kids being given a trampoline for Christmas one year. And just he talked about the just the joy of it, the joy of just bouncing and hanging out with his kids and having fun and things like that. And he sort of said, what if doctrine and theology was more like a spring as opposed to a brick, right? He's like, it was flexible and you could take a spring out and you can still bounce and you can still have fun and you can explore and it's more open, right? And it's more flexible and things like that. And so again, I read this book in a time where I was essentially in a bit of a crisis state, trying to kind of figure out what the heck I did believe anymore and if I did believe anymore and things like that. So it was actually a good friend of mine that gave me that book, and I sort of, at the time I wasn't actually a reader as such, and I sort of devoured it in a couple of days because it was such a compelling book. And so essentially fast forward to say 2011, because he wrote a few books in between, but he wrote a book in 2011 called Love Wins, which was, they called it a firestorm in the evangelical Christian world, essentially. So he basically put the concept of hell on trial.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he was labeled a universalist. Do you know what the term universalist means?
I think I do. Is that where you,
Like everybody's in, basically.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Like some people call it ultimate reconciliation. So he put forward a case for this idea. He didn't dogmatically come out and say, I'm a universalist. I mean, people labeled him that essentially. And he was called a heretic. I mean, Franklin Graham, Billy Graham's son, was on Bill O'Reilly, calling Rob Bell a heretic. There's a clip on YouTube you can actually find.
Wow.
So that word sort of started being bandied around, and it was such an archaic word, but people still see sort of value in it. So essentially, it really was a huge deal, and again, for me, I mean, the content of the book was completely compelling to me as someone who was an ex street evangelist, essentially. I was like, I mean, he said things in that book that weren't kind of, when you read something sometimes and you kind of go, that's not a new idea, but it just kind of resonates with where you already
Oh,
were, sort of
sure.
thing. You're like, it's this kind of feeling like, I'm not the only one thinking these things.
Yes.
So that was kind of what it was like. It was like, for me, that was a real lifeline, and I was just like, wow, like, and he copped a lot of flack for it. But it essentially has worked in his favor. He's ended up sort of moving out to LA, and he's kind of working on some like TV projects and more book projects and stuff. And he's been on Oprah and stuff. It was like a big sort of deal. But yeah, he was essentially called a heretic, and so obviously I was sort of lining myself up with the likes of him years ago before he was even in that much of the limelight. And I sort of wonder, because I guess I should start formulating some questions for you here. But I sort of wonder, as an outsider to faith in that regard, like, I mean, as you are now, obviously you've been in it here and there, obviously in your past, but um, when you sort of look at, I mean, obviously an atheist, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, obviously, but an atheist obviously would look at a religious person essentially and not give them the highest amount of credibility because of their beliefs, I suppose.
Sure.
But what does it look like? I'm curious to know, like, in that sense, like when I kind of tell these sort of examples, and I'm sure you
Hmm.
know of your own in some ways, but like from an outsider's perspective, what does that look like to people?
Well, I believe it or not, I have an answer for that. So I've always thought that if I was religious, I would be super fundamentalist. Um,
You're an atheist, so
like,
of course you would.
yeah, because I don't know, um, if the core of Christianity is the Bible, and you can play fast and loose with what was said, or make up your own
Yeah,
interpretations, or whatever, then then so what? Then how are
it
you
carries no
adherent?
weight.
Yeah, I mean, how are you adherent to those doctrines if they can
Yeah,
just mean anything?
yeah,
On the other hand, I recognize that this sort of Rob Bell, Oprah Winfrey spirituality, universalism, kind of view of life is great, and a lot of people respond to that, and
yeah.
it makes them feel good, and
Would you say, sorry to
that
interrupt there, but would you say on
sure.
that point, like, would you acknowledge that some people need that because of their background?
Need it in what
Well,
way?
like, I mean, this is one of my points in that, like some people, um, when you're so steeped in,
Mm.
so say, like the evangelical world, to go from, I guess, need it in the sense of like a process as part of their journey to kind of go, but like, say, going from someone who dogmatically has been taught the idea of burning in hell and being fearful of that.
Ah,
Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm saying,
yes, I
I'm
do.
saying need it on a psychological level.
Okay, so yeah, so now you're speaking my language. This gets to the core of why I am an atheist. I'm an atheist because the way that I view the world is these things are either true or they are not. The God either exists or he does not. And if Christianity is at its core or in its traditions or
Mm.
whatever, about it is about doing things a certain way, accepting Jesus, being nice, loving thy neighbor, and whatever other tenets come along with Christianity,
Yeah. You say that like
then,
it's a script.
well, isn't it? I mean, I don't
No,
know.
no, no, no,
It,
no, not
yeah,
at
I mean,
all.
from my
Not by
point
my
of view,
my mind at all.
yeah, I mean, from my point of view, it is. There are certain things that you have to do to be a quote good Christian.
Right.
And so if those things are not true, if it's not true that you have to do these things or that they're not as weighty as people,
Mm.
make them out to be, then where do you get your information from? Is it just a feeling then?
Yeah.
Are you just going by what makes you feel good? And then where is the religion? Where is the
Yeah.
God?
Yeah. Well,
So,
to answer that question in a nutshell, yeah, most of what we do is to feel good. Most of us
oh,
believe
sure.
what we believe because it feels good. I mean, as they got Peter Rollins, the Irish sort of philosopher, talks about. He's like, I have a vested interest in believing that I'm a good person because I have to hang out with myself all the time. you know, so it I mean, yeah, I think a lot of the motivations that we have, and this is a little bit of my pushback on atheism in that sense as well, is this kind of idea of not really being that honest about your motive. Like it's sort of this sort of like, well, I'm just searching for truth and I just want the facts. I'm like, well, no, you don't. You want to feel good like any other human being, right? There's a little bit of disingenuousness in some respects, in my mind at least.
Well, you have to explain what you mean by that.
I think you're all a bunch of selfish. No, I'm just kidding. No, no, no. Well, look, I think that at the core level, we are all human, and we all have these impulses. And I mean, it's funny. I was talking to a friend of mine last night about this notion. I mean, I know atheism is big on talking about rationality. Let's all be rational. And I was like, that's kind of a joke to me because this idea that human beings are primarily or fundamentally rational at all, it's just laughable, to be quite honest. Like, we're not rational. Like, we have the ability, this is what I said, like, we have the ability to ration things out and to be rational, but by nature, human beings are emotional, impulsive, like pleasure-seeking organisms, if you want to say it like that.
Yeah, but I mean, that is not necessarily a good thing. I think you're
I
pointing
don't
out
think
that
you can
it's,
fight against it.
well, that's true. I mean, you're going to have
We're
people who,
wired to go for pleasure.
yeah, and that's fine as long as we recognize, that is in our nature. But if we can not accept things on flimsy evidence, which makes us or which compels us to do
Yeah.
things in a certain way. So, I mean, this idea, I just want to make the point that atheism encompasses all kinds of people from all kinds of backgrounds, and it really only means one thing, which is
A
we
lack of
just
belief in God.
simply, yes, we just reject the idea of a God.
It's alright, I know the
Okay, so
doctrines. I know the
yeah,
doctrine.
okay. So you say, you have said before that it's a doctrine or it's a belief
I'm
system or
teasing,
it's
I'm
a
teasing.
no, no, but you have, and you've also said that it's a religion before.
No, no, no,
And
no, 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 no. I have to clarify that because I did not say it is a religion. I said in its very, and I have to say this clearly,
okay,
in its dogmatic deconstruction of religion and its focus on the negativity of religion, it mimics religion. It's that saying, as I've said, you become what you behold. You move towards. It's like if you're driving. If you start looking at something while you're driving, you start turning to that direction. It's like it's impulsive. It just happens. It's what happens. So no, it is not a religion, and no, it doesn't have its own Bible and its own doctrines. I'm being light-hearted when I say that, but
okay.
I'm saying at a core level, like you and I. I mean, if we can boil it down to saying, well, I believe in God and you don't, and put that aside or bracket that out, we can go,
Hmm.
well, we're still human. We're both human. We have that in
Yes.
common, right? Uh, we both bleed. We both have emotions and feelings and dreams and desires, and and this is again like And look, I've made enemies on both camps because one thing you have to understand about me is I annoy theists and Christians as much as I annoy atheists. I don't.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
can imagine that.
absolutely. And I love it because, and I said this again to my friend Jacob last night. I said, and he's someone who I really admire. He's a lot younger than me, but he's this kind of guy who's just incredibly curious about the world, and he brought himself a telescope recently, and he's just like enjoying nature, and he's just on this sort of path and trying to figure out the world, and he asks these compelling questions, and I just love that. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm drawn to, and this is what I'm realizing as I sort of work through these ideas, is that I'm drawn to people that are curious, and people that are on a journey, and people that are not so arrogant to think that they have it all figured out. And I'm saying that to myself more than anyone else, to be quite honest, because I have been a person that thought I had all the answers and thought I had it all figured out. And I think this is half my resistance towards atheism, and it has nothing to do with the beliefs. Evolution could be 1,000% true. I don't give a shit, to be quite honest. The thing that makes me want nothing to do with atheism, and I'm generalizing, I think you're an anomaly in some ways, is I don't see curiosity in the movement as a whole. I see people, and again, this is generalization, but I see people going, I'm an atheist, therefore that means I'm smart. Well, no, it doesn't, first of all.
Yeah, of course not.
Atheism is not a synonym of intelligence. It's just not. And I just get bored when people... I mean, I don't know if you listened to that clip I posted on my YouTube channel of that guy Milo Yiannopoulos with that guy, the Amazing Atheist, and some of his kooky friends.
Yes, it's so funny that you described it like that, because I was going to tell you, I did start to listen to it and I got bored with it.
It's just boring. And even Milo said in the conversation, he said to them, you promised me this wouldn't go this way. He goes, you promised me we wouldn't have these pointless dogmatic arguments, And they just couldn't help it. They couldn't help themselves but go there. And it's kind of inevitable, I think, with Milo, because, I mean, he's gone into, like, the Joe Rogan podcast, and I know Peter Boghossian was actually on that too. And he's sort of railing against atheism and things like that. I'm like, I knew it was kind of a matter of time before Milo was going to be in some kind of setting with atheists who challenged him. And I found his responses quite compelling in some ways. He gave some sort of nuanced thoughts.
Well, in that setting, I don't want to say anything about. I don't want to say anything terrible about the individuals in that group, but the group together is a mess.
Oh, they're nutters.
I mean, TJ, for example, TJ is the amazing atheist, and he actually makes some really compelling, interesting videos sometimes by himself.
Yeah.
But I've never seen anything Drunken Peasants that I thought, what?
Well, I didn't even know what that were. I didn't even know what Drunken Peasants was until I saw that. But I mean, I sat through 2 hours of absolute drivel to record that piece of the interview.
You're a trooper.
It was unbelievable. Well, I knew that the topic of religion was coming up, and I was like, I want to capture this because this is interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a whole nother kind of a sidetrack, I suppose. But again, look, here's what I find interesting is, I mean, you've got your kind of preconceived ideas of what Christian faith seems to be. But the funny thing to me is when you describe your idea of Christianity, I'm just like, that's got nothing to do with what I want to be a part of at all. Like, at all.
When you, what thing do I say?
But when you sort of describe it as this, like, this is a set of beliefs, these tenets that we just follow, and I'm just like, boring. Like, if that's all it is, I'm just like, no thanks. Like, are you kidding me? I don't see it like that at all. And this is the thing. And I mean, look, let's dive in here because I want to kind of kick this up a gear, I guess. But
sure.
I kind of was half joking when I said to you on Skype earlier that, I said, what would you say if I said to you that atheism is a radically Christian move? And I don't know what your first thoughts were when I said that to you. Maybe you could elaborate.
My response was, I think you're packaging a lot more with atheism than I do.
So there's a very serious conversation to be had on that subject because, joking aside, I do actually, in a sense, believe that completely. Like, again, Peter Rollins wrote a book called Insurrection, and the subtitle of the book was "To Believe is Human, to Doubt is Divine."
Yeah.
And what he basically set out to say in that book was believing is easy. He says, give me perfect teeth and a white suit and I'll get anyone to believe. Right? That's what he said. And it's interesting. I can't wait to talk to him. I'm hounding him on email, and we're supposed to be talking this month. But
Awesome.
you know, he's done some street sort of evangelism in his past as well. He's got an interesting story. But he says, yeah, to believe is human, to doubt is divine. And he's basically taking you'd be familiar with the sort of the passion story of Jesus, right? The whole, like, Jesus on the cross, when he cries out, he says, my God, why have you forsaken me?
Yeah.
And it was the theologian G.K. Chesterton who basically sort of mused on that idea and said, on the cross, Christ becomes an atheist. That's what he actually says.
Yeah.
And and sort of Peter sort of unpacks this idea, and he says it's not an intellectual atheism. He says it's an existential loss. It's an existential. It's God separated from God. Essentially, I mean, it's complete. Like, it's this existential felt loss, and I think, he sort of. And again, like I think I've said to you, like he does these sort of religious practices like atheism for Lent and stuff like that, where it's like, what are you going to give up for Lent? Well, I'm going to give up God, And I think I would argue that it is a radically Christian move in the sense that, and again, I'm sort of, I love these, again, not to compliment myself, but these sort of two series that I'm trying to do, this whole belief in this detox sort of thing, I think they complement each other quite well because, on the one hand, I'm talking to someone like yourself who's not, in the faith, as they say. And then on the other hand, I'm sort of relating with people who are on the fringes and the edges of faith.
Yeah.
And I think that there's some interesting conversation to be had in this space,
It absolutely is. I mean, one thing that I can certainly vouch for is that there is all kinds of ranges of belief. That is one thing that I have learned probably in the last 6 months that I really didn't understand before.
Yeah.
Was that there's a vast range of different beliefs.
Yeah.
So I think it's very interesting.
Yeah.
And it's nice to talk to you in that way.
Yeah. So I think. I would almost say, to me, I mean, when you sort of want to define faith and say Christianity is X, Y, and Z, and if you're not doing this, then you're not being Christian. If you don't believe these tenets, then you're not Orthodox, and you're a heretic, to bring up the word of the day. I call bullshit on that because I think, to me, faith is an evolving and a growing process that requires continual questioning and continual challenge, much in the same way that science does, right? That the moment, much in the same way that life in general does. I think when you stop, what really freaks me out is not people that ask terrifying questions, is people that have no questions whatsoever, right? When people have nothing to question, they have nothing to, to sort of, they're not curious, and that's what just turns me off.
I think that's a Rob Bell quote.
What's that?
I think that's a Rob Bell quote. I think he actually said that too.
What was that?
That he said that it terrifies me that people don't have questions.
Yeah. I think I'm probably hijacking that from him, actually. Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. And he, one of the other things, to quote him on that note, he says, "I don't think faith and doubt are opposites." He says, "I think they make fantastic dance partners." And he said, it's like doubt in that very sense is not the opposite of faith. Doubt is evidence that you do believe, because why would you, I mean, by very virtue of seeing the value of doubting something, you're putting stock in it, you're putting
what are we doubting? When we talk about doubt in general, or maybe this Christian malaise kind of doubt, what are we talking about? Like, what are we doubting? The actual and fundamental existence of God, or are we doubting some tenet or something we have to believe?
This is the thing. And I mean, in a real sense, I mean, yeah, I really don't want to get. I really do not want to get into the whole does God exist or not conversation because it's been done to death and it's boring. And ultimately, even atheists, I do like that quote that, I can't remember who said it, but they said, that whole sort of admission of scientists, scientists basically saying, well, we don't know where the Big Bang came from and blah, blah, we just know we're here and we can deal with it from here. It's that sort of quote that basically says, grant us one miracle and we'll explain the rest,
Hmm.
which I think is quite funny. So ultimately, in that sense, nobody really knows. Like, I know you'll get these 10 out of 10 like Christians fundamentals that'll say, yes, I know God, I
Yeah.
believe in God, blah, blah, blah. I get that. I know that exists,
Yeah.
But I would say, as someone who was one of those people, I call bullshit on that as well because I'm like, you're not really in that space. You don't when you're hurting and when the rubber hits the road and you know you're down on your luck and you're at the bottom of it all. You're gonna be very human and go, I don't know, like I have no idea. I think when life is easy and everything's going your way, it's easy to be a 10 out of 10 believer.
Yeah. But I mean, that is, I mean, it's not to me. I'm when I say what are we doubting? What are we investigating? If what you are doubting is some um, portion, some part of what you've been told you need to accept in
Hmm.
Christianity, and that's the doubt that you are looking into.
Yeah.
That is sort of, I mean, to be honest, that question doesn't interest me.
Yeah.
I'll from a, I understand that these are things that people struggle with, but from my point of view, it's a non-topic because I don't accept the the fundamental premise
Hmm.
that we should even. It's like that. It's like theologians don't study God; they study other theologians, right? We haven't learned anything new about God in
It's
three
true.
thousand years,
Yeah.
and 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 so that's sort of when you are in the world of theology or in the world of belief and you already believe and you already accept this core idea,
Yeah.
then sure, you are free to question all of the minor points and the details of whatever your church believes or whatever your
Yeah.
pastor told you or whatever.
Yeah.
What the question that that is most important to me is, you know, does is there a good reason to believe
Hmm.
that any of this is an issue?
Yeah. But again, here's what I find interesting. Here's the space in this conversation that I think is very interesting to me because, and again, even being someone who consciously calls yourself an atheist, this is what I find interesting: is that by definition, you're kind of it's this almost this admission that you have a dog in the fight in some respects because you want to, because to me, and I've said this many times, if I was to quote unquote be an atheist, one, I wouldn't call myself an atheist because it wouldn't make any sense to me. I mean, not to bring up John, but that's kind of his position where he's like, I spent 18 years being a dogmatic, fundamental evangelical Christian. Why would I give myself another label? Like, that's just absurd. So I think by definition of holding the title, I mean, I do. I use the photo on one of my blogs. There's a guy on. I found this image of a guy. He basically just has his T-shirt on. It says, "I'm an atheist. Debate me." Um,
Yeah,
and I'm just like, you sum it up perfectly. Like that's just what it is. And I know you make the distinctions of the fedora wearing atheists and blah blah blah, but really, if I believed that this life was all I had, and the God question was just absolutely absurd, I wouldn't need a label, and I would just be getting on with my life, and I know we've discussed the whole political side of it and that, and living in America, and I don't really want to go over that again because I think we've covered
sure.
it, but on a fundamental human level, if I believed this life was all I had, I would just get on with it.
Yeah. Well, so that's a very good point.
I know, I
Ninety
made it myself.
nine nine. Yes, you're a very clever guy, Mark.
I am.
Uh, yeah. I mean, 98% of my life is just getting on with it.
Right, right.
And I do have a concern, as we discussed, and we
Yeah,
won't go into details.
you're evangelical.
Yeah, I have a political problem in this
Yeah,
country. I see
yeah,
religion as the core
yeah,
reason that the world can't
yeah.
get along with each other. Um, I think there's a lot of
Isn't there a
reasons.
quote by what's his name, John Stewart? He says, "Religion." What does he say? He goes, "Religion, bringing people together and like creating a hope and I see something along the lines of shelter from a world divided by religion."
Yeah,
I,
that sounds like a Stephen Colbert thing,
I'm
like
kind of
something. So
no, it's John Stewart, but
is it? But yeah,
yeah, I'm kind of butchering the quote, but it's something along the lines of this kind of circular reasoning. Look, I can go with you on a lot of this, and look, as I said to you earlier, if I could switch off this God thing in my brain right now, I probably would. I honestly probably would, because most days it's more of a burden than a blessing.
no,
I don't know how not to believe. It is in the core of my being. It's in my DNA. I have this core. This. I think whether you want to say the God of the Bible or whatever, what kind of being we're talking about, I don't know ultimately. I think there's to me there's more going on than the material. I don't have evidence for that. I can't dogmatically argue it. I think I just have this sense that
yeah.
there's
So
more.
I tell you what question does interest me. Is that very question right there. Why do you think that you have it and you can't escape it, but I don't, and I can't see life the other way? Why is it that
Well, this is the thing. I mean, religion and atheism kind of need each other. I mean, even on a financial level, I mean, some of these atheist comedians wouldn't be doing so well if they didn't have deluded religious people to rail against, It's kind of the yin and yang.
yeah, but I mean seriously, there is an answer to I guess that there is an answer to the question of why do some people have such a strong, unshakable faith like you do, and
Yeah.
some people like I will. Faith is not a reason for me to do anything.
Yeah, well, yeah, I know, but you sort of framed what I said a little bit differently to how I just said it because I don't describe it. What I'm describing is not a faith that I'm consciously holding on to. I'm,
No,
s-
no, you're right. You're right.
and this is what happens sometimes. People, we all do this. I think we take snippets of information and we kind of filter it back the way we make sense to us. But that's not what I was saying. I'm saying I don't know how not to believe. I'm not saying I don't. I'm not saying I don't want to stop believing or I have to hold on to this belief like a security blanket. I'm not
Hmm.
saying that at all. I just have this sense, and I know it might sound, makes me sound crazy to an atheist, I guess, but I just have this
No.
sense that there's more. And I think, you know, again, I mean, there's silly arguments. There's silly arguments that get made of atheists don't have a moral standing, and you've got no conscience,
Well,
and blah blah blah.
yeah, I know what you're saying, but I'm not talking about the arguments. I'm talking about there is something about your makeup.
Yeah,
Either, I mean, to me, I think it's in your brain because I'm basically a naturalist,
yeah,
right?
absolutely, absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
but maybe you think it's something else,
Well, this
and
is what I
so
was
there's.
talking to my friend about the other day. I was saying, well, if we are just in this completely material world, I mean, DNA, as I understand it, I'm not a scientist, in case anyone thinks I am. DNA, as far as I've been made aware, is essentially a digital code. I mean, it's embedded. It carries information that that forms reality in the way that it is, and like your skin regenerates every certain number of days, and like your body is essentially wired to keep making more of you. It's the information is still stored somewhere, and and things like that. And even the concept of consciousness, and where does consciousness emerge from, and how does evolution explain consciousness? And quite frankly, I don't think it can. And again, it's like, and this is the thing as well. Even in our observation, and this is a little bit maybe too postmodern for an atheist, because atheists don't seem to like postmodernism much. But in my observation, I've heard Richard Dawkins sort of railing against it a little bit. But even when we make these observations of the world around us, we neglect the reality that we, as observers of the world, are still part of the world we're observing. So we'll never get that. We'll never get away from that reality. There's always going to be that kind of connection with, like, it lacks its complete objection. And even if you want to get like kind of quantum physics about it, you've got these kind of subatomic particles that manifest and change their behavior based on whether they're observed or not.
Yeah.
I think it's the Heisenberg principle or something like that.
Yeah.
So there's something going on here. I don't think fundamental religious people have all the answers by any stretch, and I certainly don't think atheists do either. I think it's this kind of isn't there? Oh, there's a documentary called "What the Bleep Do We Know," which is fantastic.
Yeah, I've heard about it.
It's just this, another great documentary, actually, to do a shameless plug, is called I Am, which is made by Tom Shadyac, he directed Ace Ventura, actually. He's a comedy kind of director. He's amazing. But they were studying the behavior of animals and things like that, and finding that, say, in like a herd of, was it like antelope or whatever, they would imagine, what they imagined was that there was like a leader in the group that would, because it was all about their feeding habits and drinking water at certain times of the day, and if they went at the wrong time they would become fall prey to predators and stuff like that. And essentially they filmed the behavior of these animals for a number of days or weeks or whatever, and found that they essentially had a democratic community where they were all voting, essentially. Like, they would sort of start looking in one direction and they would all sort of follow each other, and it was like these head movements were kind of like they were basically voting essentially with the behavior.
Interesting.
It was really interesting, and as soon as they had like a majority vote, they all just were like, sweet, let's go. Like, it was really interesting. And I mean, there's other things you could bring up, and I know, and this is what I find interesting, because I think, and I'm doing a lot of talking right now. I know that. I'm quite consciously aware that I'm talking a lot. You're a good listener. You're too good at listening for a podcast.
Yeah, I'm doing my best to. I do have some objections to some of the things that you're saying, and a couple.
Bring them up. Throw an objection.
Yeah. Well, so number one, I bristle at the way that you are being told what DNA is. I mean, scientists use the word code with respect to DNA because it has the appearance of information, but it's chemicals, and a code is something that an intelligent thing puts together and codes.
This is what I find. Oh my goodness! And look, I'm just going to throw this out here.
Yeah.
Even the way you're talking right now, I'm just like, this idea. I mean, the human brain is infinitely more complex and complicated than any supercomputer on this planet, right?
So? Okay, I said so. But go on.
See that? I mean, I know where your response is exactly going to go. The fact that you've just said that, like, I'm just like, are you nuts? Like, I'm just going, how do we look at something that's man-made and go, that had to be man-made because it's got corners and edges and it's got information, it's got programs on it and blah blah, and yet we can look at something as amazing and complex as a human brain and go, yeah, that's just a blob in my head. Like, what the hell? That just, and I'm talking a lot here, and I'm not making an argument. This is just striking me as you're talking. I'm just like, why is the God belief the dumb one? I really don't get that.
Well, because what it does, and by the way, I wouldn't characterize it as dumb.
I know, I was making an over-exaggeration.
Yeah, of course. But I wouldn't characterize it as dumb, and I want to make that clear, because people like intuitive answers, and when stuff is very complex or even hard to believe, this idea that as cool as we are and as complex as the brain
Phenomenal.
is, and yes, I mean, there's lots of really amazing reasons that we could say, oh my, somebody had to have built that. Who made us
Okay,
humans,
okay. The God
But
question
from
aside, do you not just kind of scratch your head some days and go, "What the fuck is going on?"
no, not at all, because I think
That's why. Oh man, that's why I could never be an atheist.
well I don't think that's true. If you were more interested, so like you read, I can tell, based on your Rob Bells and your other reading list, you read about theology, I read about science, and so I probably have a little, I'm not a
Okay,
scientist at all. I'm a
would you
computer
call
program.
yourself a people person, Lucas?
I think would I? No, I don't get along with most people.
Yeah, no, that doesn't. That answer doesn't surprise me. Atheist, and again, look. Well, I mean, if you go and listen to my conversation with Milo Yiannopoulos, I mean, he referenced. And I haven't done homework on this, but he basically said that he'd read. And this is going to sound really insulting when I say it to you live. Actually, he'd read some studies that showed a correlation between atheism and autism, essentially. Um, and I know that sounds really bad when I'm saying this to you now. It's just what he said, and it's on public record. So,
Oh,
um, he said by that definition, atheism is a sort of a brain disease, and it does seem to. And look, you are clearly a bit of an anomaly because you're much more of a people person than many people that I would think do label themselves atheist. Um, Again, I mean, I. I mean, I know John shared his kind of cringeworthy views of the likes of Richard Dawkins, for example. I just like. I mean, I know like Richard Dawkins. I actually made a meme of it actually, just to take the piss out of him because I think he deserves it once in a while. Um, he on his Twitter profile, he's got a photo with a T-shirt that says "Religion. Together we can find a cure." And I made a meme that said, "Oh, what did I exactly say?" It was like, um, "I'm considering a career in comedy. Is this funny?" I was just like, I was just like, really, like, it's just. It's quite awkward and cringeworthy, and I don't, to me, and I'm not saying that. Look, I mean, my experience in growing up in an absolute world of belief, you get some assholes. Like, not all Christians are compassionate, empathetic, but many Christians that I've come across, and again, I've come across non-believers as well that are kind and compassionate, of course, but seem to be and it sort of ties in a little bit with what you were saying earlier. That there does seem to be this fundamental wiring in our brain that, I'm a very empathetic person, and I don't say that proudly. Look at me, I'm empathetic.
yeah.
I'm just an emotionally impulsive person. I just am, and I'm starting to get comfortable saying that because it's just the truth. Um, Maybe we do need each other. Maybe it's just okay. Maybe it's fundamentally okay that you're an atheist and I'm not, and that's the way the world should be. I have no idea if it's even the right way to say it.
Well,
Maybe we need each other.
yeah, I don't. I mean, of
Know what I'm talking
course,
about?
yeah. I mean, of course, we need each other, but because I don't think I think you do have to have, like, in a society, you want all kinds of different views. Like, if we didn't have churches or faith communities up to this point, I don't know that we would be as far as we are in
Yeah.
society. Um, but um, but when you were talking about atheism is there's some component of autism.
I didn't say it, not my words.
Yeah, that's fine. Um,
I wasn't calling you autistic.
but I think it's curious that, like, I don't know about that. I've never seen that. It would be
Yeah, I
interesting.
might ask him for the studies on that.
Yeah, so I'll have to take a look at that. But on the other hand, if our typical sort of view of the insane asylum is all these people who believe they're Jesus, right? And so,
Full
which is
disclosure, I've been in a psychiatric ward, by the way.
Did you think you were Jesus?
I did it. Well, Well, quite honestly, no, not explicitly, but I did, and I am quite happy to be honest about this because I'm curious as to your response. I did have some what I would label at the time very divine experiences and feeling like I was kind of one with God in a way. Um, I mean, again, I think a lot of it is chemicals in the brain, absolutely, and all that kind of stuff, and medication can help with that. But yeah, like I did have experiences that I would have labeled at the time as very, very spiritual. Absolutely. I think as someone who's been to the other side of sanity, I think there is genuinely a fine line between sane and insane.
I could completely agree with that. I mean that, and that's interesting. You know, it is brain chemistry is a very, very interesting subject. We don't know a lot about it, but I mean, if you can take a few micrograms of lysergic acid diethylamide (LSD) and go on this absolutely insane trip,
Yeah.
obviously, brain chemistry is very susceptible to, you know, tiny, tiny fluctuations in our chemical makeup.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, to me, that's yet another reason to believe or understand, or I don't know, to refute this idea that God made us perfect. If that's true, and I can eat a little plant and go off the deep end,
Well,
uh,
who's saying God made us perfect?
well, again, so this is part of the problem with religion, right? Is if I was having this conversation with Ken Hovind, he would have already told me that God made us perfect.
Perfect is
Y-
an illusion. I was actually just saying this last night. Perfect is nonsense. There's no such thing as perfect.
I'm fully aware of that. I'm a huge supporter of no such thing as perfect. So we yet again we agree,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm not talking most often, and this is part of what's hard about a conversation with you is you
You
are
can't put me in
not.
a box.
Yeah, I can't put you in a box. You are not most Christians, Mark. You are
No.
not the way most people believe.
No.
So, but yeah.
Yes.
So anyway,
Yeah. I could say so much more right now. Um.
well, yeah, please do. I
No.
mean,
No. 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 Well, I mean, this is half the thing, and again, I think we should wind down a little bit here because we've been talking for like
okay.
a good hour now. Um. This is half my not even my problem with street epistemology as such, but it's just such a disconnect. It's to me, it's just not compelling. The whole thing of framing things the way it seems to frame things, and it does seem to be lacking of. And I appreciate your honesty in completely admitting that you're not so much of a people person. I find that quite interesting that you're quite open about acknowledging that, um, because yeah, I mean, it does. If I can say it this way, when I watch, say, the likes of Anthony, and again, I've watched fragments of a handful of his videos because I genuinely can't stomach them because I find them socially awkward to watch. And I know that sounds really harsh, but it does seem like a very unhuman interaction to me. To me, it does. Um, I I just don't know. And again, I find it interesting. Even the whole compulsion to do what it's doing and to go out and sort of not to make people believe something because I know it's not telling anyone any information. I get that, but essentially it's doing something. It's trying to push someone in some sort of direction.
Yeah, I don't understand. Um, I think so. I really don't understand this idea of watching Anthony's videos and thinking that they are anything but polite
No, no, no,
and
they are. I didn't say they weren't polite. I didn't. Don't put words in my mouth,
okay. So
Lucas.
all right. So what is the word that you
It's
used?
not
Excuse
that
me.
it's not polite. He's very polite. He's extremely polite. He's like that's probably half the problem. He's too polite. That's part of the inhumanness of it all.
Yeah.
Nobody's
Okay.
that polite.
Inhuman.
No, no, no,
What is the
not
word that you
not
used?
inhuman isn't morally. Not that was the wrong word. Like just. I don't want to have this conversation about someone else. I don't like talking about someone else. I mean, Anthony doesn't look.
I completely agree, but
He doesn't even
I mean
want to
that
talk to me.
yeah, I mean, so I get that, and my issue there is I really don't feel like there is an honest reason that people can be upset about this street
I'm not
epistemology thing
upset about it. I didn't say
unless
upset. I didn't say upset.
unless what that's my word, but you know what I mean. That to have an issue with, to think it's terrible or whatever. My concern about this idea of street epistemology, and people saying that they don't like it, is if that can only come from like they feel bad or empathetic or
Oh, no,
people who
no,
are
no,
being
no.
offended or
Fundamentally not. That is not true at all.
okay.
You know my biggest issue with it? It's not dangerous, it's not offensive, it's not upsetting, it's not compelling. It doesn't compel me at all. It's not asking good questions. It's like it's boring, to be quite blunt.
Boring.
It's just boring. It bores me to tears.
I can understand. Sometimes it is boring. I mean, a lot of times it absolutely is boring. Ask Anthony; he would tell you.
Well, he
It,
seems to. Well, no, he seems to love it. I mean, I've heard him say at one point in one of the videos, he says, I could do this for the rest of my life, he says.
yeah, he could do that for the rest of his life, but you can't do it all day every day. That's what I mean. It is
Well,
boring.
I mean,
Listening to people, listening to people who haven't thought about what they believe and why they believe it, and
yeah.
it is
I
hard,
think, and
you know,
it,
for all the
look,
reasons that
just
we
to
talked about
contrast
before.
this, and I think this is probably a good place to wind down, because, I mean, I
Okay.
guess we could keep talking. When people want to stop listening, they can stop listening. We can just keep talking. Um, there's no rules. I
Mm,
think for me is, and you've seen, one of my videos of me doing street preaching,
yeah.
where I was being, forceful about what I was saying, and I did have a message to share. And to me, that was compelling at the time, because I was explicit about the idea of having a message, and I think the conversations were incredibly much more engaging than street epistemology, because of the fact that I did have something different to bring to the table, because I wasn't going, oh, I don't have anything to say, I'm just asking questions and I don't really want to push anything, and like people, and this is the thing, goes beyond whether religion's right or wrong or what I was saying was true or not true.
Okay.
This goes so far beyond that. People love people love conversation, people love the dialogue, they love, I've had some very engaging conversations, some of them with people on my podcast lately, where we've had profound disagreements. Look, as an example, there's a guy, John Robinson. I recorded an episode of Detox with him. He has his own sort of faith-based podcast. And we were talking for about 20 minutes, and we were recording, and I was just sitting there in my head going, I want to punch myself in the face, because this is boring. This was so boring, and I was like, this is not a compelling conversation at all. And I just knew, I was like, I'm not putting this out. I'm not putting this. And I got to the point, we talked for 20 minutes, and I said, and I didn't know how to say it. I was like, I don't want to be a dick here, but I was like, let's just stop, because like all we're doing is agreeing with each other, and it's just boring.
Yeah.
And so I know he has some very left liberal ideas with his kind of Christianity, and again, mine lately are not so much that direction. And I was like, let's talk about some stuff we disagree with. And we
Yeah.
ended up having this, what I thought was one of the best conversations ever, because I stopped it and just restarted and was like, let's talk about the things we don't agree on, and let's have a conversation that's interesting,
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is compelling. That's where you can grow and learn, and you can get pushback. I think if you're going to be this person that goes out without an agenda and without a message, well, one, nobody can challenge you, because you're not making any premise, like you're not putting anything out, you're not putting any content on the table in the discussion.
Yeah.
And two, it's just kind of, I think it's almost, and it's funny, just to put some context here and to even the scale a little bit, one of the criticisms that Peter Rollins gets quite a lot is that he's big on talking about, the function of belief and how we believe more than what we believe, And
Hmm.
somebody actually asked him, it was a question, somebody at that Dangerous Ideas thing he did with Lawrence Krauss, someone said to him, basically was like, do you talk about the how of belief so that you can kind of hide behind it and never be challenged about what you actually believe? And I was like, I kind of could make the same, judgment upon street epistemology in a sense, because it's going, Yeah, we don't put any content out there. We're just here challenging you about what you believe. Never mind about what we believe. Like, it's just kind of it in that sense. I don't know if you can not necessarily agree with me, but at least understand what I'm trying to say.
Well, if I do understand what you're trying to say, I think what I hear is, and you can and obviously correct me if I'm wrong, but what I hear is this is not good entertainment.
Yeah, oh, it's boring as hell. And I think here's what I think, and I'd be interested. This is where I think would be a good place to wind down a little bit because I imagine, like, I can almost put myself in the shoes of an atheist picking up Peter Boghossian's book and reading it for the first time. And I haven't read it, and I to be honest, I might actually order myself a copy and read it one day. But I can almost imagine people reading it, going, "Oh, a manual for creating atheists. Whoa, what an interesting title!" And then kind of reading it and going, "Oh my goodness, this is like a bulletproof formula for telling people they're wrong without telling them they're wrong." And like, it's this moral superiority and this intellectual, hierarchy, and we get to be on top and we get to ask all the questions. And I'm like, and again, I'm saying this as someone because this is how I felt when I used to do street evangelism. I was like, this is like a superpower. That's what it feels like because you're going, I've got these tools to go out and deconstruct people, and and never deconstruct myself, and I'm indestructible. And that's what it feels like. And it does feel psychologically, and I know this is what I felt like. You feel superior.
Hmm.
Am I making sense?
Yeah, I mean,
Too much
so I
sense?
guess,
Did I
yeah.
was that too close to home?
Well, no, I mean, I disagree with the idea that you feel superior.
Oh, I could
Because
just imagine
when
how it
I
must
do
feel
it,
though. I mean,
when
how did it
yeah,
feel for you?
well, when I was on the street actually doing street epistemology, which I intend to do again very soon,
No, I'm
but
trying to talk you out of it. No, don't stop. Give
I'm,
up.
I'm doing it.
No, I'm
But
saying when you read the book,
I
like
want to
when you
say
came
this.
across the concept.
Sorry.
I'm more curious as to know your thought process when you were first coming across the whole idea of it.
Well, I did first come across Anthony's videos,
Oh, that's how
and
you got converted.
well, that was the start of it. But you remember how you said, you know, how you come across something, and you're like, oh, I'm not the only one thinking
Oh
about
yeah,
this.
yeah, 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 yeah. I can resonate with that. Yeah.
So there are guys like Matt Dillahunty and Sam Harris and Aaron Ra who, for the longest time, have been talking about this idea of epistemology. Like, do you have a good reason to
Yeah.
believe things?
Yeah.
And when I came across Anthony's videos, I was like, oh man, that's that's how we can talk to people. That because if you any other way, like if there's a guy called Ted the Atheist on YouTube,
Yeah.
and his approach works on like this macro level where you can make people feel stupid, and sometimes that works, you know, to get them to abandon
Yeah.
their bad ideas or to think about them at the very least. But I think it's terrible. I could never do that. I could never be part of a solution uh, where I talk to somebody and tell them that they're dumb or that I don't, you know, that I think they're terrible. And I think Anthony's way. So Anthony's videos, you think it's not good entertainment. Maybe it's not entertainment for me either, but it's it is extremely compelling because I love to hear why people believe what they believe because maybe first of all maybe they can teach me something, and if they can't, maybe I can teach
Do
them
you
something.
really think that though? Do you really think maybe they could teach me something?
Absolutely. Yeah, of course.
Really?
Why would I you know what time it's almost 3 o'clock in the morning. Why would I be talking to you?
Yeah. On that note, let's stop this. Yeah. Actually, no, we should stop this by the way because we've been talking for quite a while now. But
Yeah, I mean,
we
yes,
sort of
but
sidetracked off the whole heresy subject, but I think it got us somewhere. And thanks so much, Lucas. This has been insightful, and we have to continue this, I think.
yeah, I agree. I do really enjoy talking to you, Mark. I think you're a swell guy.
Oh, that's a fantastic place to press stop.